What are your initial thoughts? We thought this was going to come down the pipe from Donald Trump. It has now come. What does this do to risk appetite and financial stability in the world?
Well, if we look at the global economic outlook, it must be said that overall it's a positive outlook. Also as concerns Europe, we expect economic growth in the range of 2.1% this year and next. But we have already indicated that actually this kind of trade conflicts are actually raising downside risks to the economy. So certainly we see that this is a worrisome development, and I expect that it's going to have some negative effects on the economy.
How do you see it affecting EU-China relations? You were in Beijing. You met some of your counterparts in Beijing yesterday. Are you encouraged by their pledges to the EU for market access and openness?
Well, indeed, as we know that Chinese authorities had announced their works and reforms towards market openness, including for financial sector. So we are encouraged with those political signals. I had a meeting with Finance Minister Liu yesterday to discuss these developments. But of course, what's important to see is a practical implementation.
So promises are one thing, implementation. What kind of things was he talking about or specifically telling you?
Well, in this case, we were concentrating on market opening in the area of financial services, so we're going a bit more in sectoral approaches in different sectors. As we see, all in all, this seems to be going in the right direction, so we must then see what practical improvements also for European financial sector it means. We also touched upon trade, where I think it's important that in this situation of raising trade tensions, we preserve multilateral rules-based approach, and we preserve the role of international organizations like World Trade Organization in this case.
Did you get any indication from the Chinese finance secretary that they could use market access as retaliation against the Americans?
Well, we're not discussing the specific case because it only came this morning. It was not there yesterday, but clearly we can sense this unease and worries about this unilateral approach U.S. is taking on trade.
Now, we heard from Jean-Claude Juncker last week saying that the euro must be strengthened. It must be bolstered to become, on par with the U.S. dollar eventually as a global currency. What concrete steps do you see could be taken in that regard?
Well, indeed, we have announced the work towards strengthening the international role of euro, and that European Commission would come with a communication on this by the end of the year. So currently we're working on this, looking at different areas, what it means for international trade, what it means for payments, what it means for euro as a reserve currency, and we'll come with a communication outlining several work directions.
If I can pivot then as well to, obviously, Brexit is coming hard and fast. There's fears that it could lead to the hard Brexit. There have been some reports that emergency legislative proposals have been made to, in case there is a hard Brexit, to protect financial market regulation. What is being put forward by the EC or being discussed by the EC?
Well, first and foremost, of course, we're concentrating on reaching the agreement on a withdrawal deal with the UK, and hopefully we are able to do so in next month or so. But as you know, already before we had also been preparing something which we were calling preparedness notices, outlining different scenarios and what are the possible implications and possible reactions on the EU side. And this concerns many different sectors, including financial services.
I mean, obviously, contingency plans are being made for the hard Brexit. A French official is telling us that talks right now are extremely difficult. Do you see it that way?
Well, talks are progressing. Probably one of the complicated issues still to be dealt with is a question of Irish border and how to respect so-called Good Friday Agreement and what implications it has for UK relations with EU in terms of customs and in terms of customs union.
How about clearinghouse supervision? That is another issue that is a hot button one right now that has seen a lot of resistance as well from the likes of Mr. Giancarlo of the CFTC, others as well. Is there anything that is being planned or proposed that would change your mind or others in the EU that you do not want to necessarily go ahead with the planned continued oversight of that for overseas financial institutions?
Well, actually, as you know, we had put forward the legislative proposal on CCP's supervision already some time ago, and currently it's discussed with EU co-legislators, with European Parliament and EU member states. Obviously, we are in contact with our international partners. Myself, I met Chairman Giancarlo some 2 weeks ago to discuss those issues, and certainly we can find a balanced solution here. But in any case, it's clear that we also need to be able to address risks coming from CCPs, and that's what our CCP supervision proposal is doing.
And finally, I do want to touch on the money laundering issues. There have been a lot of high-profile cases of late, whether it's with ING or Danske Bank. How much does these new cases pose to financial stability and pose new risks? And are more cases possibly going to be unveiled down the road?
Well, as regards anti-money laundering, indeed, we see that this current framework which we are having, that we have EU anti-money laundering rules, anti-money laundering directives, but then the application of those rules is fully national competence, is posing some problems, as we see in several recent cases. So just last week, European Commission came with a new legislative proposal to strengthen the role of EU institutions, to strengthen the role of European Banking Authority in the area of anti-money laundering.
Because you say the current framework and rules have failed us.
Well, we certainly see that there are problems, and that's why we came with a new legislative proposal suggesting how we can help address them.